Welcome to the latest edition of the Food Systems Podcast, brought to you by the Forum for the Future of Agriculture. My name is Mark Titterington, and today we're joined by Jesús Antón, Head of Unit in the Agriculture and Resources Policy Unit at the OECD, and we're discussing their latest report, Policies for the Future of Farming and Food in the European Union, something, of course, at the core of the Forum's mission itself, and of course, very important given the EU's strategic dialogue on agriculture, which is taking place against a backdrop of squeezed farm incomes, loss of biodiversity, and effects of climate change. Jesús, a very warm welcome to you. Let me start by asking you about the report. You say in the report that agriculture is a critical juncture for reasons that I just talked about. I think we'd agree with that. What do you then regard as the main challenges faced by agriculture policies today?
Thank you, Mark. I think around the world, the food systems are facing now a very important triple challenge in order to ensure food security and nutrition of a growing population that will reach 10 billion people in 2050. And at the same time, supporting the livelihoods of millions of farmers, but also other workers that are along the food chains. And at the same time, doing that, conserving and enhancing the natural resources, which is the base of in which agriculture depends. And this includes soils, water, biodiversity. The reality is that the food systems are not currently in meeting all these triple challenges. We know that about 2 billion people do not have regular access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food. The environmental impacts from food production are also considerable, with habitat losses due to agricultural expansion and different practices in agriculture. And food systems are accounting already for an estimated 1/3 of anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions. At the same time, repercussions from systemic shocks like the recent COVID-19 or the war on Ukraine exacerbate the pressures on the livelihoods of the people that are working in agriculture and in the food system. And they also risk the supply chains, trade, and food security. They also brought the attention and the resources to these important short-term issues, but that also take out the attention and the resources from longer-term challenges that are associated to climate change, the need to gain productivity in the sector. Those will make our sector more resilient for the future. So the big challenge precisely consists on developing policies that go just beyond the narrow concept of agriculture and reconcile these multiple goals. In particular, increasing production while taking care of the environmental natural resources. It is true that this is a big challenge, but at the same time, it is true that the level of awareness and information that on the dimensions of the challenge ahead that we have now is higher probably than in another time in history. So there may be an opportunity to change the mindsets and the actors for the food systems and the whole economy to make a difference. But it remains a big challenge.
You know, I mean, as you say, I mean, the level of awareness, the data that we have available is probably the highest that it's ever been. When I read the report, and this is my interpretation, Jesús, not necessarily yours, I don't wish to lead you, I thought I detected a pretty strong implication that in your view, the view of OECD, the common agriculture policy, which of course defines much of the food and agriculture policy of the European Union, has not yet adapted to, or perhaps arguably not delivering for farmers against the overall policy objectives, particularly those articulated by the Green Deal. Is that true? And if so, why do you think that is?
Well, in the OECD, following the consensus expressed by the Declaration of Ministers of Agriculture in 2022, we tried to assess the performance of agricultural policies based in the concepts of productivity, sustainability, and resilience. Productivity, in order to allow to produce more with less. Environmental sustainability, in order to take care of the scarce natural resources, and also resilience to the systemic shocks that arrive. And we call all these like virtuous path, sustainable productivity growth. In our recent review, Policies for the Future of Farming and Food in the European Union, we have assessed the performance of the European Union, and if we have to say something, the glass is at most half empty, in the sense that this is not fully delivering in terms of productivity, with an annual total factor productivity growth, which is still positive. It is but a bit less than 1%, lower than in the past in other countries and in other countries like China and Canada, and particularly with the US in the past. But it's not also delivering either in terms of the environmental sustainability, with some indicators like nutrient and phosphorus balances going in the right direction, but others that have stalled progress, like for instance greenhouse gas emissions that used to have decreased in the first decade of the century and now have increased again. So we have also bad performance in indicators as important as biodiversity, which is a big concern, as you know, in terms of the biodiversity around the farms. This is not fully surprising because the starting point of the policies is far from the optimum, despite that the EU has been doing significant support to farmers, which is approximately 16% of the revenues, and despite previous reforms, most of the support is not promoting innovation and environmental sustainability, and many of the payments and support are continuing the inertia of the past and can even prevent the intergenerational change that is needed and the transformation that is required. So despite the clear improvement in the past, current policies reflect the inertia of the past and are not fit for purpose.
I mean, a lot of what you said there is things that the forum has also begun to explore, particularly in terms of how we fund this transition for farmers to a more sustainable, resilient, climate smart, nature positive, if you like, food and agriculture system. One thing that stood out to me in the report, you talk about a path dependency that the CAP appears to suffer from. I mean, again, if that's true, how does it overcome that path dependency? And I mean, I'm not sure you use the word, but one could argue that it's inertia that is underpinning that path dependency. How do we get past that?
Well, the good news is that, yes, the policies have a path dependent, but we in the OECD have already some specific ideas and suggestions of how to improve that. Already the Common Agricultural Policy of 23-27 that has just started in this, as you mentioned, this critical juncture in terms to meet the European Green Deal objectives, it has movements in a direction which are interesting and useful. First, they have is a movement from compliance to performance, which is just basically, rather than just complying with some practices, thinking about how they perform in terms of the results. Second, there is a new delivery model that gives more responsibility to the member states through their capacity plans, and probably with this more ownership, is more probability of success and delivery. Third, there is new eco schemes that are focused on remunerating the farmers that make an additional effort into the environment. We bring in our report 15 recommendations on the strategic that I think they can contribute to the strategic dialogue of the future of agriculture in the EU with specific actions. They don't come out of the blue. It is the result of a strong engagement with the European Commission, but also with other stakeholders, holders when we have reviewed in the last 2 years. And they include 3 big groups of things that I will afterwards develop through our conversation. A push from the present, modifying the specific policy programs to make a better job for farmers and for the environment. Second, reorienting the whole policy towards innovation to reconcile productivity, sustainability objectives, which was not in the case, in so much the case in the past. And third, embracing the future with a clear definition of the objectives that affect agricultural productivity, trade, but also other policy areas, and also better targeting these specific objectives.
So let's just come out a little bit from CAP and even perhaps from Europe and look at a broader question that is within that, which to me is how can we I think we have to find a way to reconcile the environmental objectives that we have in agriculture with the productivity and competitiveness goals. In your report, you allude to it. Do you think it's possible, Jesus? Can we do that?
Well, this is precisely the core of the problem. And in the short term, there is a clear trade-off between producing more and doing it in the same way as we're doing, and therefore harming the environment and natural resources. However, in the medium and long term, innovation opens big opportunities, because innovation means freeing from the weight of the past and changing the way we do things to reduce precisely these trade-offs. Reorienting support from traditional payments towards innovation for sustainability and facilitating the double transition, digital and environmental. I think it is the main idea that in our report as well we bring for the European Union and for other countries as well. So bringing innovation to the center of the EU agricultural policy. And this is not easy because it needs to require different goals, and innovation for sustainable productivity is the magic powder that somehow will allow to do with more with less, including less natural resources. Innovation still is not in the center. OECD estimates of agricultural support have estimated that only 6% of the support that the European Union is providing to the sector goes to knowledge and innovation. It's a bit more than the OECD average, but it's less than Australia or Canada and many other countries. Innovation needs to be strengthened and induced towards this sustainable productivity, and this should be made the core of the policy to have a greater synergies as well with other policies. Innovation requires many aspects. First, of course, paying for results and give freedom for farmers, researchers, and industry to find solutions. Second, improve the assessment of the skills and making sure that we develop a good skills strategy among farmers, but also in other actors in the sector to upgrade this and attracting the skills, including the skills on knowledge and digital and entrepreneurial, that could facilitate finding precisely these solutions that allow us to advance in all the goals, and particularly in these two fronts, productivity and sustainability. That requires also enforcing advisory services and the participation of the farmers in the agricultural knowledge and innovation systems. Therefore, reconciling productivity and sustainability requires a significant change of gears to make the flow of knowledge and the skills the main driver of the agri-food sector and the center of the agricultural policies.
So, you talked about innovation and factors that are important for innovation. One of which I'm not sure I did hear you talk about, which is pathway to market, the ability for companies that are working in agriculture, bringing innovation forward to get that into the market as quickly as possible. And there are some examples, some would say even in biological inputs, for example, where the aspiration to get more biological inputs into the market is not being matched with the speed to market that some of those companies would need. So I just wondered whether or not the OECD had looked at that in the context of this report and indeed other things that you're doing.
Definitely, yes. Of course, it is very important, the role of the private sector and the links between the whole agricultural knowledge and innovation system and what is happening in the markets. And this requires moving from just research and development to the adoption of technologies. And that involves definitely the private sector, the companies, but also the farmers. And that's what I was trying to underline, how the interlinkages between all the elements in the innovation systems are crucial in order to make it work and adopt these technologies. But don't remember that the farmers are a bit in the center to a lot of the things that are happening on the ground, and therefore it is important to upgrade their skills and make sure that they are connected to their research and to the companies, in order that there is the flow of knowledge and innovation between the different elements and participants and actors in the agricultural knowledge and innovation system. And this is why we make the emphasis on, in the policy side, in our report, on moving the policies from this emphasis on supporting doing the same activities that were done in the past to supporting the change, supporting the movement towards innovative ways of doing things that incorporate the environmental sustainability as part of the way forward.
Lovely to hear you talk about farmers being at the centre of this. Sometimes I do have a concern that that's lost. It seems to me abundantly clear that there's no pathway to the transition that we want to make without farmers and land managers being economically viable and therefore able to deliver the elements of the change that we want. So great to hear you talk about that, Jesus. I want to just turn to something which you may or may not have a view on, and it's absolutely fine if you don't. In the forum and along with others, we talk about the need for systemic change, with all actors taking a share in contributing to that transition. You know, whether that's the value chain itself, the input providers, the financiers, the banks, the insurance companies, and so forth. We talk about that because we recognize ourselves that there is a limit to the role that policy can play. It's a key enabler, but it's not necessarily the only one. What's your view of, if any, of what that systemic change needs to look like, and whether or not there is a limit for what policy can do, and where we need other actors to step in and help to deliver some of the elements of the change we're looking for?
Definitely, you're right. I mean, policy is not the solution for all these challenges. Policy is an enabling instrument, but an important enabling instrument, and that's where I think we have to understand and fully acknowledge that the change that is required, this change of mindset that is required, have to come from all the actors and the stakeholders in the food systems, and particularly the private sector, which has the strength and the resources to innovate and find solutions. But at the same time, the policies can make a lot of have a big role, particularly on bringing two things. First, making sure that they define the priorities, particularly in the areas that require the development and the provision of public environmental goods and other public goods, for which the private sector is not well fitted in order to deliver. And that's an important area in which nudging the whole innovation process towards this sustainable productivity, not just the economic productivity, but also the sustainability, the environmental sustainability, and the use of natural resources. That's a first important role for the policies. A second important role is the fact that the policies have particularly to avoid the being an impediment or hindering this kind of innovation and change process. And very often some policies just create inertia and continue keep the inertia of the past, rather than just facilitating the movement towards a different policy set.
Great to hear that. I know we're coming to the end of our time here. Just maybe a final question, well, observation and question, I suppose. We had the pleasure to listen to former US Agriculture Secretary Dan Glickman last year, good friend of the forum, been on this show and others many times. He said that there's never been a more exciting time to work in food and agriculture, which I and I guess you would probably agree with. And yet, Jesus, that the perception persists that farming is an old-fashioned job. It's not modern. It's not cutting edge. It's one of yesterday's industries. What is your view?
Well, my view is that it is not an old-fashioned job. Farmers are working and taking care of basic natural resources that are a priority for the society and a priority particularly for the young. The perception of the profession is not good. I think you're right, and this is right. But this can change, and there are good reasons for changing it. Think that agriculture is in the cornerstone of delivering food security and protecting soils and land. This is opening new opportunities to deliver new food and new environmental goods that are demanded by society, and particularly by the young, I insist. There are new technologies and practices, including digital, that can facilitate this transition, this change, and which are attractive as well for the future. From this perspective, I think the agricultural sector can attract a smart talent in order to tackle this triple challenge, and including the young people. And policies can also make a difference also to change this perception. And we know that old-fashioned payments that will not make attractive the sector, because they most often do not compensate for the high price of land and for the hard work of the farmers, and they do not induce the change that is required. Meanwhile, a new mindset may be emerging now if policies embrace innovation and the double digital and environmental transformation to attract precisely these new farms and take advantage of the new entrepreneurial opportunities that are coming in the sector. So I think digital technologies can play a big role. Also, they can make much more attractive the work in farming because they can reduce the need of manual tasks and physical labor. They can make it more flexible as well and make it more easy to conciliate the family life with the work. They can reduce health risk and allow on-farm diversification to tourism and to hospitality services. So I think current studies in the OECD have identified that these factors can make farming more attractive and encourage new entrants to the sector. Farming has a fascinating future as a cornerstone to deliver the new path of sustainable productivity growth and respond to the triple challenges. But we all, as governments and policies and society, need to really change this mindset and see the farming as a profession of the future.
What a great rallying cry, Jesus. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, as indeed it always is to you and your colleagues at OECD. Congratulations on the report. Policies for the Future of Farming and Food in the European Union is available to read. You'll be able to do that clicking on the link that will go with this podcast. But for now, Jesús Antón, many thanks indeed for taking the time to join us this morning. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you very much, Mark, and the forum for the invitation. It's been a pleasure.
You've been listening to another edition of the Food Systems Podcast, brought to you by the Forum for the Future of Agriculture. Join us again soon. Thank you.